The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Culture by the Minute here on Cable 14. My name's Jeremy Freiburger and I am the Chief Connector and Cultural Strategist for a local art service organization called CoBALT Connects. So our show Culture by the Minute is always about culture, what's going on here, what's going on in the province, and bring it to you here in Hamilton. Our last episode was focused on festivals without facilities. We sort of introduced you to the idea of what a NAICS code is. So this week we're flipping the show, doing a focus on cultural facilities as opposed to those without facilities, which is NAICS code 711311, theatres and performing arts facilities. And specifically we're talking about the role of HECFI, the Hamilton Entertainment and Convention Facility here in Hamilton. It's going through some changes right now, and we're excited to talk about what that means for our community. HECFI includes Hamilton Place, the Hamilton Convention Centre, and Cots Coliseum. They're all city-owned facilities that have been a part of our cultural landscape here in Hamilton since the mid-60s when HECFI was built, or Hamilton Place was built. But since April, the City of Hamilton's been going through sort of an audit process and a review process of that facility, how it's managed, what its role in the community is, and has made some major changes in my mind. This past week, staff recommended and council has ratified a decision to bring in a team of external management partners to manage those facilities and the programming that goes on in them, and sort of take over the role of managing those facilities. So Carmen's, who's been brought in, Carmen's Banquet Facilities, they're well known in the community, have been brought in to manage the convention center itself. A group called Live Nation will be coming in and leading the concert booking and major event facilitation in the site. And Global Spectrum will be leading the facility management and the development of Cots Coliseum, I think with the hopes of an NHL team being a part of that. So it's an enormous change to one of the biggest cultural facilities right in the center of our community. So we thought it apt to talk about on Culture by the Minute. And we are thrilled to have City Manager Chris Murray here to join us today. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Jeremy. Glad to be here.
Before we dive into the whole HECFI issue, I always think it's important when we're bringing city folk onto the show that we get a sense of what your job is as city manager. It's one of those titles that not many people get really into the nitty-gritty of. So could you give me a couple of words on what your job is, maybe what a day-to-day looks like in the world of a city manager?
Great question. The job of city manager is to basically oversee the administration and all of its services that it provides citizens and support services that are provided to each department. We run a $1.8 billion organization, so it's basically my job to ensure that that money is spent as wisely as it can be, providing services people want. Fantastic.
So the quarterback of the City of Hamilton, Chris Murray, I know you've had to dance through some interesting projects over the years, so I'm glad to bring you to the show and get really first-hand knowledge from someone of your stature in the city infrastructure. So for those of us that haven't been following the story, Chris, can you give us a quick walkthrough of why we're going through this sort of audit process and operational review process around HECFI? What's brought us to today?
Certainly. So you'll recall back in 2010, there was I would say, an anomaly in the budgeting of HECFI, where the subsidy which we had been providing that organization for a number of years, which was in the order of about $5.9 million, had expanded to $7.9 million. And so that triggered some concerns by council to want to review the function of HECFI, which in 2011 we undertook that through my office. And as you point out just recently, staff have recommended a change in the management responsibility of that organization to the parties that you've just identified. So again, it began with an audit, which then led to a search for interested parties, not just local, but international. And that has culminated in a recommendation that the committee has endorsed and is to be brought to council shortly.
Excellent. So oftentimes when we look at these things where we're bringing in external management partners, it's because the city itself doesn't feel it maybe has the expertise to manage that type of facility or program. Is that the case with HECFI in this case? Do we feel like we just don't have the expertise in-house to lead that project on our own?
I don't know if I'd say it that way at all. You know, and I want to be extremely respectful and thankful to the parties that have been overseeing HECFI for the last while. Sure. John Hertel, I think, has done a fantastic job of managing an organization through difficult times, and the staff, those that know them, know that they are pretty terrific people. But there is a moment in time where council want to know, you know, is this the group that should be leading these facilities into the future, and gave us direction to go see if others would be interested. And so it's not so much, I think, a reflection on the staff that have been doing their level best at trying to deliver, you know, important product to Hamilton, but are there other parties that could do the same and maybe make some improvements and generate some savings?
Yeah, absolutely fair, and you're absolutely right in saying that the folks that have been there, I know a lot of people that have worked there for decades now, especially folks on the back of house side of things, doing a great job, and the city maintaining the facilities under its own wing was one of the options considered, so it wasn't like that was thrown off the table for any, you know, sort of other reasons. So from the reading I've been doing in the last couple of days around HECFI, sort of in historical perspective, it's a facility that's had trouble turning a profit or sort of keeping a benchmark budget. It looks like since about the early 90s. Are there major factors that through this audit process that you've become aware of, or that council's become aware of, that were really big factors in that facility having a hard time sort of keeping itself on a stable ship in that sense?
I think from almost day one, HECFI has been subsidized to some extent by citizens of Hamilton. So I don't recall, and I confirmed with our treasurer, if there ever being a time where there wasn't a subsidy. Certainly in the early 90s, there was moments where operating surpluses, if you will, were realized, and that never changed the bottom line, which was that you know, the city taxes would be allocated to those running of those venues. Mm-hmm. But clearly, you know, it's interesting. In the early 90s, there was an economic recession of sorts, but nothing compared to what we saw in 2010, where, you know, the world economy took a major hit, and so people's disposable income, you know, became, you know, a topic of major concern. And so what we saw, what was experienced at HECFI, was a ballooning of the cost to run it. So as I said, I think that's what triggered our review of it. You know, HECFI as an organization has relied on subsidy. The question is to what extent, you know, should taxpayers be subsidizing an important set of venues like the ones HECFI operates?
For sure, big question, big question. So to help in determining what that subsidy is, or if there needs to be a subsidy, and sort of who the best partners are to bring this facility forward, the city brought in KPMG to help with that audit process and help evaluate the different proposals. And as much as it wasn't just a financial decision, there were sort of 4 to 6 key principles that I found that the city was looking at when it was trying to determine which proponents to consider and move forward with. So those are, and I'll just read them: enhancing the lives of Hamiltonians, maintaining the core current uses of the facilities, so keeping them a sports facility, an entertainment facility, and a convention facility, attracting a larger mix of sport and cultural offerings, including the potential of an NHL team, fostering private sector investment and spin-off in the downtown core. And then the two that I think are really the core principles were reduce or eliminate the subsidy to operate HECFI, and respect the use of the facility by local arts and cultural groups. So with those in mind, I went to the GIC meeting where council was receiving the report from Tony and from staff to get a sense of who they were recommending to go forward with, and it seemed like the majority of the conversation was focused on financials. So is it fair to say that the key principle that we were looking for was that decrease or elimination of the subsidy and potential deficit from the facility, or were we looking at all 4 to 6 of those as core principles moving forward?
Fair question, Jeremy. I think certainly what got us to, you know, start the whole review was a subsidy concern, and And so the fact that our treasurer was focusing very much on the potential savings really doesn't come as a great surprise. But I think we got to be clear too. I look at Hamilton Place, and its very beginnings started with not just government putting money towards the building of that facility, but citizens who contributed to it financially and otherwise. And so it's never been lost on any of us the importance of that particular venue in terms of serving the local community. And so I think in terms of where we're going with this process, and it's important, I think, for the viewers to understand that the next step is for council to support the recommendation. And then after that, we're going to be directed to develop a management agreement with the parties that have been mentioned. And it'll be very clear in that agreement that what the purposes of these buildings are, and not to lose sight of the fact that yes, money matters, but so does the very reason why we built these facilities decades ago. And so there is an expectation that homegrown venues like a Hamilton Place are going to support homegrown entertainment. And so that has been certainly part of the discussion. It didn't come through, I think, as strongly as maybe, as you're suggesting, Jeremy, could have at the committee, but that's never been lost, I think, in the minds of council, never been lost in the minds of staff, and has been certainly part of the discussion that's taken place with the proponents that put forward their best proposals.
Excellent, and I think that's great to hear, Chris, and sort of in keeping with the recently passed cultural policy that we're looking at decisions with sort of either a three-leg or a four-legged stool, whichever one is the flavor of the day for stools, to make sure that culture is part of that consideration when we're looking at things economically and sustainability, that we're also looking at sort of the cultural impact of things. So at this moment, I'd like to throw to an interview that we did earlier this morning on the steps of City Hall with Councillor Sam Rula on the topic. Thanks for joining us, Councillor Sam Rula, Ward 4, East Hamilton. Glad you joined us this morning. Beautiful Monday morning.
Indeed, my pleasure, Jeremy.
Good. We've recently made some big changes with HECFI and Hamilton Place and how that's being managed. My first big question is, Hamilton Council, and I think maybe as a community, we've had a track record of difficulty with big decisions. How do you feel we've done with this decision and the process to get you to that decision?
Well, I beg to differ on having difficulties making big decisions. Any big decision needs to be thought out. There needs to be a debate, dialogue, opposing sides having an opportunity to consult and be part of the process. So although some people may consider that to be difficult, it's democracy and something we should be applauding rather than criticizing. Having said that, the HECFI initiative is something that I'm very proud of as a direct result of initiating the entire process. Being criticized at the beginning of the process, I'm now proud to say that it actually did bear fruit, and we're in a position where we are going to either mitigate and or eliminate the subsidy, which really was the contributing factor to the initiative to begin with.
Right on that issue is, I think really the core issue of this whole process is mitigating or eliminating that subsidy. The proponents that we've chosen are basically they're stabilizing what they're asking for in the subsidy, but they've also sort of left City Council to make a bit of a gamble in that they're not guaranteeing their losses over that 5-year contract. Do you feel that leaves a hole in that conversation about actually mitigating our use of the subsidy?
No, I'm confident that we're headed in the right direction. We were as high as $11 million in 1 year of operating subsidies. We've now have that already under the interim board, and now we're moving towards decreasing it even more. So frankly, no matter how you look at it, we've already saved millions and millions of dollars, and the schedule shows that we will be saving millions more. I trust that the proponents, who are local proponents particularly, are proud individuals. I don't believe they're going to be in a position, particularly being so active in the business world, in a number of generations, with the younger ones as well coming, or up-and-comers, that they're going to be in a position where they're going to proudly state that they're not going to keep their word. So I'm going to hold them to that, and I trust that they will do the best job possible to mitigate and or eliminate that subsidy, which already is happening as we speak.
Yeah. And I think I would agree that I think Council's made the right choice with Carmen's. They've got a great local history of running that kind of facility, but we've brought in Global Spectrum and we've brought in Live Nation to really manage the major cultural components of this, which is where our show is really focused. What role does council play from here forward managing those two companies with specifically Hamilton Place in mind, about it being a cultural facility, not just an economic generator, but a cultural space?
Well, we have to, again, try to bridge that. Originally, that was the intent. That was a different time, a different economic climate, when we actually had money in the bank. It was that generation that led to the building of these facilities. They at that time could afford to absorb those subsidies for those cultural reasons. We no longer can. During that era, there was a 70% assessment base from the commercial and industrial core and 30% from the residential. That's been reversed entirely. Actually, now we're in a situation where almost 90% of our assessment is based on residential taxation. That's not sustainable. So, as everything occurs in life, things evolve. We're in a position where originally, perhaps, it was built upon the premise of it being subsidized based on a cultural significance. I still believe it has cultural significance, but we can't subsidize it to the same tune, and nor do I think the taxpayers of the city expect us to. What we do need to do, though, is bridge those two premises and try to find a common ground to try to mitigate not only the subsidies, but also the need from a cultural perspective.
This all comes on the heels of the city sort of moving into the final stages of its cultural plan, a big policy piece for the city. Do you feel that is there a connection between those two decisions of that HECFI is maybe losing some of its cultural significance to meet up with the economic conditions of our time and the development of a cultural plan?
I think the cultural growth that's occurred, and many people within the arts community will say that it had nothing to do with City Hall. So I'm not sure why people would suggest that they're looking for a handout. They're proud people, and I think that they want to do it on their own. I don't think they're coming up to us and asking for charity. They're asking for an environment that's conducive to that growth, and we're providing that.
Great. Excellent. Thank you for your time. Always glad to chat with you about what's going on inside
Likewise.
City Hall.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Sam. So there you have it from outspoken Councillor Sam Rula from Ward 4, East Hamilton. Really glad he was able to join us. So at this point, Chris, we're sort of in a position where we're rolling forward. We've got our partners chosen, and like you said, now it's time to get into sort of the fine-tuned dealings of how do we manage each of those specific spaces and what are the conditions for doing that. So I think the city has made a solid choice with Carmen's, and declaring an interest. I have sat on a board with PJ Mercanti in the past, so do know PJ. But I think the family's got a great track record and a local track record for managing that exact kind of space. So looking forward to seeing what they're doing. The other two partners I knew less about, Global Spectrum and Live Nation, as much as they're big entities. Did a little bit of digging into who they were, what they do. Global Spectrum managing hundreds of facilities, mostly in the U.S. They've got about a dozen or so in Canada. Unfortunately, no theaters in Canada, no performing arts spaces in Canada, and the ones they manage 5 in the States out of about 100 different properties they manage. The ones they manage in the States are either much smaller than Hamilton Place or embedded within university campuses. So can you speak to me a little bit about what made Global Spectrum really jump to the top as the facility management partner in this?
As you know, I mean, you can check their website and certainly look at their submission, but at the end of the day, they are an international organization that has locales across the world, so certainly in the Middle East and Asia as well, not to mention the States and Canada. And in terms of just even locally, if you travel down the road to London or go to Oshawa or go to Toronto, it's interesting in London, the Labatt Centre there is absolutely, London Knights play there, about a 9,000 seat arena, but also you'll know that the place is also used to do Broadway plays. It's also used to have concerts, and it can be set up in a variety of ways where it can be intimate or it can be a 9,000 seat boisterous kind of venue. So they do have experience hosting a variety of events and a variety of shows, and so they're not really kind of a one-trick pony here either. I think they have a wide diversity of venues that they do run. So in Live Nation, I think Live Nation it was evident in their submission and their presentation that they are a major promoter across the globe, and they have both parties have a tremendous interest in Hamilton, which we are trying to undertake a variety of things in the downtown that are going to expose us to not just local opportunities, but provincial, national, and international opportunities. So, there's a good reason why we have right next door to the HECFI facilities a brand new medical family research campus coming downtown. Go Transit's coming downtown. There's been a lot of things that have already happened, more that are coming, we see this decision regarding HECFI as in another piece in the puzzle that is important if we're going to not just maintain the cultural identity of Hamilton, but to promote us economically. So we do believe that the partners are capable of running these venues quite successfully.
Excellent. So the big question here was still a financial one of sort of pushing down that subsidy. The proponents we've chosen are one of the proponents that didn't include any major security in my mind against the risk side of this, and that they've all, this consortium in particular has put in, I think it's $500,000 towards potential losses. So if HECFI and the consortium that they're running run similar losses that we've seen from the facilities in the past, that would be about a quarter of the potential debt. Are we concerned that we've not selected a proponent that's stepping up and saying, we're professionals, we're going to manage this site, and if we lose money, we lose money, that at the end of the day we're not going to turn around and put that back on the city's debt pile?
Well, certainly you've got a consortium of parties looking to look after all the venues. So, I mean, as you pointed out, we have one that is local. I mean, those that were in committee the day that the Mercanti family presented why Carman should be running the convention center, I think people saw one of the best presentations ever made to a committee of Hamilton Council. I mean, they are a passionate group. They have a long track record of success. And they said very clearly that there'd be $1 million in savings right off the top, no conditions, no strings attached. And so that certainly is part of what's happening here. And so the others, Global Spectrum and Live Nation, it is more of a balancing between benefits and risks. And certainly that's something that we can articulate, I think, more clearly through the management agreement we're going to work on with them. Carmen's absolutely, it's pretty clear in terms of what the risk is to Hamilton, and there really isn't any. They are very aggressive in their proposals. The others are, it's more of managing both the risks and the benefits that unfold as we go forward. So, I think that's reasonable in light of the circumstances, and we can look at it as a glass half empty, or we could look at it, as an opportunity to maybe increase revenues that we haven't seen here before, because we're dealing now with two parties that are extremely well connected around the globe. So that's not a bad thing for Hamilton to have some international parties that want to come here and do business.
Good stuff, Chris. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We're going to close. We throw to a few events at the end of every show, so I'm going to throw to a few great events that are coming up in the Hamilton calendar, and then I'll give you a little sign off in a minute. So our events for this month. The Malhar Group presents an exhibition of musical instruments from Asia, November 9th to 16th. A really fantastic group working here in the community, also working with the Immigrant Culture and Art Association. That's going on at Workers' Arts and Heritage Centre down at 51 Stewart Street. We've got the Brian Prince Booksellers presenting Salman Rushdie, one of my favorite authors. I'm getting tickets to this one, October 26th at the Lincoln Centre. You can get more information at www.lincolnalexandercentre.ca. And our final one, Lee Fields and the Expressions, playing on October 6th at This Ain't Hollywood. You can catch that, more information about that at thisainthollywood.ca. So, from my perspective, folks, that's our show. HECFI plays, I think, an extremely important role in our cultural landscape in Hamilton, and this conversation around what its role will be culturally ongoing is really important. I grew up in that space, doing the Nutcracker, playing the role of Hamlet, all sorts of great stuff. It has the ability to play an on-the-ground role in our cultural development, and I really hope it continues to do that. That's been this week's show. We're back, I think, October 15th, here again on Cable 14 with Culture by the Minute. I'm Jeremy Freiburger from CoBALT Connects. Have a good day.